Well, no good deed goes unpunished, and it looks like one of our favorite companies, Coinbase, is about to have a hit piece come out about them in the New York Times. What do they do to deserve such attention? Well, I've actually covered it a couple different times on this channel. Here is the short version for anyone that needs to catch up. Coinbase's CEO, about, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks ago, time is like a meaningless concept anymore, but about 6 to 8 weeks ago, Coinbase's CEO sent out a memo to their entire company basically telling them, we are not going to be focusing on woke nonsense in this company. We are going to be focused on our actual jobs. If we are not the type of company that you want to work for, then we will give you a 4 to 6 month severance package to part ways with us. Go on your merry way. Now, this is an extremely diplomatic way to handle these situations. What generally happens at organizations where you have an uprising of employees, and you might think Spotify, you might think the recent thing at Penguin Random House Canada, where employees were literally crying over the fact that their publisher is going to publish Jordan Peterson's upcoming book. But these uprisings by employees can be actually incredibly costly to organizations in terms of lost productivity, lower morale, increased interpersonal nonsense, all that good stuff. So what Coinbase's CEO decided to do was to give the woke employees their exit strategy. He gave them a very generous severance package to say, I don't want to work for a company if they're not going to be woke. Well, as it turns out, many woke employees really aren't willing to put their money where their mouth is, as it were, and it only ended up costing them about 5% of their overall staff. Only 5% of the staff at Coinbase actually took this extremely generous severance offer. And I think we can surmise that it wasn't all because they wanted to be woke. I mean, I bet some of them were thinking about leaving the company anyway, and oh wait, a little golden parachute comes down with 4 to 6 months worth of salary. Of course they're going to take it. So this was actually a really promising exercise, showing organizations, showing executives, showing CEOs that one of the better ways to handle this is to pay your woke employees off. Say, here's a boat ton of money. If you don't want to be part of a company that doesn't want to go woke, you are welcome to go work somewhere else. And what they found is that very, very few people are actually going to take it. So I would bet that Coinbase's CEO, by offering 4 to 6 months worth of salary, just saved his company a metric ton of money that they'd have to pay to deal with the productivity issues, deal with not meeting goals, deal with loss of morale, all the things that impact actual business results. It was a brilliant maneuver. And of course, as reported by Michael Arrington here on Twitter, no good deed goes unpunished. Michael tweeted out, they will never stop attacking Coinbase after their decision to ask employees to keep politics out of the workplace. Everyone must bend to their narrative or else. And what's he got here? Well, Coinbase actually is getting ahead of this game. So what they did was they found out that the New York Times was going to be publishing a hit piece on them, and they skirted in there like a ninja and got the story out before the New York Times did. So they actually posted this on their internal company blog. We're going to read about their side of the story. We're going to read about what the New York Times is trying to do to them, how they're painting them, all that good stuff. And I'm going to give you my analysis on how Coinbase handled this situation from the perspective of an organizational psychologist. But before we get into that, listen, folks, I need your help. Now, YouTube is really messing with my channel, guys. They really, really are. And it's not just my channel. It's a lot of people have been talking about this issue lately. But the way that you can help me out and stick it to YouTube in the process is to go ahead, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do almost daily content around news, politics, culture, really anything I find interesting. So usually you'll be able to find a video or two of mine that you enjoy. So consider subscribing to the channel, clicking that little button that's down there somewhere. If you think you're subscribed, just go ahead and double check, because YouTube may have made that decision for you. And if you really want to help me out, give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment letting me know how I'm doing, share it out with your friends and family. All of those things are going to help me grow the channel when YouTube is doing everything they can to prevent channels like mine from growing. I greatly appreciate it. All right. Let's read Coinbase's side of the story. Now, one of the things I love here is that this is actually a reasonably long blog post. I mean, I don't know that we're actually going to even read all of it, but they did put a little summary here up at the top for their extra busy employees who probably aren't going to be reading the whole thing. So let's start there. Too long, didn't read. The New York Times is planning to publish a negative story about Coinbase at some point in the next few days online, and it will appear in print on Sunday. Given that this story may be read by friends and family in professional context, we wanted to give everyone a heads up and provide some important context. So this is really important. What Coinbase is doing here is they are taking care of their employees that might have a mom or dad that reads the New York Times and then calls them up and like, what sort of company are you working for? And then the employees are equipped to be able to say, no, here's what the New York Times got wrong. Here's what is actually going on. And isn't it funny that this is a Silicon Valley company? This is a company that I believe is headquartered in one of the most liberal areas in the world. And the fact that their CEO is now having to explain to their employees that the New York Times is about to lie about us. How many red pills are getting handed out at Coinbase? Like, that's probably one of the best parts of this whole story. But let's get into the meat of it all. I wanted to give you a heads up that the New York Times is planning to publish a negative story about Coinbase in the next few days. The Times told us they plan to publish the story in print on Sunday and online sometime before that. So the story may already be online as of the recording of this video, and you can go in and do a little compare and contrast with what the New York Times says and with Coinbase's side of the story. But frankly, I don't really care to go on the New York Times' website, so if you guys want to go find that story, you can do it on your own. As many of you know, Nathaniel Popper, a reporter at the Times, has been reaching out to current and former employees for this story over the last several weeks. It's now clear that the story will allege that several Black employees had negative experiences at Coinbase over the last few years. Although we generally don't alert the company to upcoming negative media stories, the exec team and I felt it was important to provide this heads up and important context because of the story's focus and because it may be read by your friends, family, and professional contacts. The exec team also met with members of the Color Block ERG this morning to inform them of the article and to discuss the questions and concerns. I have no idea what Color Block ERG is, but it sounds like it might be a little internal group that they have, so they don't really give much context for it. As Brian shared with the Color Block ERG, I mean, maybe it's like employee relations group? I don't know. I have no idea. This morning, we don't care what the New York Times thinks. The most important thing we care about is you, our employees, and what you think. And this is exactly the right attitude, man. It's exactly correct. So this is about getting your primary team on your side and also making sure that they're focused on the things that they can control. You cannot control what the New York Times is going to say. You cannot control when the New York Times decides to do a hit piece and lie about you or put things out of context. The only thing that you can control is what you're giving to the situation and focusing on the things that matter most. Context. The story will likely quote 3 former Coinbase employees and a former contractor by name and include photos of some of them. All 4 had left Coinbase by the end of Q2 2019. So this is important. So what the New York Times has done is actually gone back well over a year and a half to dig up this information. The story also relies on information from current and former employees, including leaked content from Slack, internal company meetings, and documents. The story covers our efforts related to belonging, inclusion, and diversity. Our positioning as a mission-focused company, what he means here is our position as a mission-focused company is we're not going to do that woke nonsense. We're going to focus on what our actual mission is. And the discussions we had within the company this year about Black Lives Matter. However, a significant portion of the story also focuses on major changes to our compliance and CX orgs that took place in 2018. Isn't this like, you know what the New York Times has done? It's the same thing as what Twitter does. Anytime Twitter wants to permanently ban someone and they can't find anything recently that they can permanently ban them on. So what they do is they go through their timeline, sometimes back months, sometimes back years, until they find something that they can pull out of context and say, we're going to ban you for X, Y, B, and Z. The story will likely imply that Black employees were discriminated against during this process. This is false. The story will also likely allege that a number of Black employees and contractors referenced in the story filed complaints with the company. In reality, only 3 of these people filed complaints during that time at Coinbase. All of those complaints were thoroughly investigated, one, through an internal investigation, and two, by separate third-party investigators, all of whom found no evidence of wrongdoing and concluded the claims were unsubstantiated. We have shared this information with the reporter. And so I want to note here that if Coinbase brought in an outside investigator, they're actually doing it correctly. So I've worked with a lot of outside investigators before, and what tends to happen with outside investigators when they're brought in is these people really know exactly what questions to ask. Listen, every company and every employee thinks they're like a unique snowflake, but the reality is that they're not. There are patterns that you see when you work in environments like this over time where you just see the same things occurring over and over and over and over and over again, just in different corporate environments. So the advantage of an outside investigator is they know right where to go, they know right what questions to ask, and they're going to be able to ascertain very, very quickly if something nefarious happened. Now, here's what I know about working with investigators. 90% of the time, when investigators come in and they find that there is a guilty party involved, it's because the guilty party admitted it. In the course of the investigation, they're asked questions by the investigator, and eventually they get to the point of admitting that at least some of the complaint is true or all of the complaint is true. That's what happens like 90% of the time. So the fact that these investigators found nothing means that there probably wasn't a there at all. Overall, we expect the story to paint an inaccurate picture that lacks complete information and context, despite our best efforts to fact-check details of the stories with the reporter. They just handed out a whole handful of red bills to Coinbase's, frankly, now that I'm thinking about it, not only Coinbase's employees, but also those employees' friends, their family members. Well done! Well done, New York Times! That said, we know the story will recount episodes that may be difficult for employees to read. As we shared in our recent AMA, no organization is ever perfect as the media suggests in the most glowing article, or as bad as the media alleges in the most negative article. Finally, let's be absolutely clear on these points. We are committed to maintaining an environment that is safe, supportive, and welcoming to employees of all backgrounds. We do not accept intolerant behavior, and we are committed to the refreshed belonging, inclusion, and diversity strategy we rolled out earlier this quarter. We take all allegations of inappropriate workplace behavior seriously, and we do not tolerate harassment or discrimination. If you experience or observe any potentially inappropriate behavior, you should report it to your manager, any member of the operating group or exec team, or directly to HR. The Confluence page outlines the options, blah, 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 blah. Final thought. In general, we should expect more, not less, media coverage, both positive and negative, as we grow. I'm sorry you'll all have to deal with these types of questions and comments again. I know it's frustrating and distracting. Let's keep focused on building this amazing company together. After the story is published, it's possible the reporters from other media outlets will try to write follow-ups based on the Times article and will reach out to employees. If you're contacted by a reporter, please feel free to direct them to XYZ, and then they give them a little FAQ that can be used to respond to questions. So I think that Coinbase handled this incredibly appropriately. It sounds as though they've really been communicating transparently with their employees, have given them all the information they need. And dude, the New York Times, like, what in the holy hell? As though in this day and age, the New York Times has literally nothing better to cover than dredging up 2-year-old allegations on Coinbase because they don't like that their CEO told their woke employees to go screw. Well, I hope this is a lesson to all executives out there. Listen, first of all, frankly, I do think that this is actually going to turn out well for Coinbase. Coinbase has set the expectation in their company that the woke nonsense won't be tolerated. It's going to save itself so many headaches as a result of this. Yeah, are they going to be in a hit piece in the New York Times? Sure. But at the end of the day, all attention really is valuable in some respects, and I think it gives Coinbase an opportunity to do exactly what they did, to stick to their guns, to stand up and say, no, this is the stuff we're going to tolerate, and we're not going to take your crap either, New York Times. We're going to get right out in front of this story and make sure our version is there first. So kudos to them. I think they handled it well. All right, guys, that's all I've got for this video. I'll see you soon.